The alien champion mocked him. Then the human made her bleed. But their deadliest battle awaited. Deep in the Colosseum's forbidden chambers, Dallas and Finanil uncovered the conspiracy. Rigged weapons, sabotaged matches, corruption strangling fair competition. As alarms wailed and security closed in, they transmitted the damning evidence to the council, gambling their lives on truth's power to change worlds. Dallas stood in the shadows of the Chthon Colosseum's preparation chamber, sweat beading along his forehead despite the climate-controlled environment. His Earth-standard armor felt suddenly flimsy, a patchwork of carbon fiber plates and kinetic absorption mesh that had seemed adequate during training, but now felt like tissue paper as he contemplated what awaited him beyond the massive metal gateway. 2 minutes. Earthling, growled the Ozic handler, his leathery hide rippling with phosphorescent patterns that indicated irritation. Crowds are getting restless. Dallas nodded, unable to find his voice. 6 months ago, he'd been designing atmospheric reclamation systems on Proxima Centauri B, a quiet, methodical engineer with a gift for understanding complex systems. Now he stood trembling, about to face death for the entertainment of 200,000 aliens. Ambassador Chen's words echoed in his mind. The Galactic Council has been clear. Each species seeking representation must prove their worth. For some, it's scientific advancement. For others, philosophical contributions. She had looked away then, her diplomatic mask slipping. For us, it's this: survival in their arena. If we want Earth to have a voice, we must play their game. Dallas had been chosen because he understood systems, could identify weaknesses, not because he was a warrior. The irony wasn't lost on him. A gong-like resonance shook the chamber. The gateway began to rise. Your weapons, Earthling. The Ozic gestured to a wall lined with blades, energy whips, projectile launchers, instruments of death from 100 worlds. Dallas surprised himself by reaching past the deadly arsenal and selecting only a simple metal staff, almost 7 feet long, balanced, with subtle nodes at either end that could activate low-level kinetic amplification. Not enough to cleave an opponent in two, but enough to defend himself, perhaps. Your funeral, the Ozic shrugged, mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement. The gateway rose completely, and the sound hit Dallas like a physical wave. 200,000 voices from 100 different species, all hungry for spectacle. The light from the artificial sun dazzled him momentarily as he stepped onto the red-gold sand of the arena floor. Ahead stretched a complex landscape of shifting barriers, sudden drops, and energy fields that hummed with lethal potential. The terrain would reconfigure throughout the match, ensuring nowhere remained safe for long. The massive holoscreens suspended above the arena displayed his face. Unremarkable features: brown skin, dark eyes wide with apprehension, alongside his statistics. Height, 6'1". Weight, 187 lbs. Victories, 0. Species, human, unranked. The announcer's voice boomed in a dozen languages simultaneously. From the frontier world Earth, a species seeking council admission, we present Dallas. The crowd's response was tepid at best. Humans were newcomers, unknowns, boring in their familiarity. They had no natural weapons, no extraordinary abilities, just cleverness and adaptability. Poor entertainment value. Dallas took another step forward, scanning the arena's configuration, mentally noting choke points, line of sight breaks, potential shelter zones. This was a system. He could understand systems. The announcer's voice swelled again. And now, defenders of the Chthon title, champion of 43 consecutive matches, the pride of the Veltar Dominion, Finanil. The crowd erupted with a roar that made Dallas's previous reception seem like silent contempt. From the opposite gateway emerged a figure that made his throat go dry. She was magnificent. Nearly 7 feet tall, with blue skin that seemed to capture and refract the artificial sunlight. Her body was a study in lethal grace, powerful yet agile, armored only minimally, with segmented plates that left much of her lithe musculature exposed. Golden tattoos spiraled across her visible skin, each one representing a victory, their metallic sheen shifting hypnotically as she moved. Her white hair flowed like liquid starlight to her waist, bound with golden rings that matched her amber eyes. Nil carried twin energy blades that hummed with deadly potential, curved like ancient scimitars but crackling with a power that could shear through most conventional armor. She didn't activate them immediately, instead, pacing forward with predatory confidence, examining Dallas with open disdain. When she spoke, her voice carried easily across the arena, enhanced by subtle amplification. "This is what Earth sends. A soft little thing that bleeds at the first touch?" Her accent gave the words a melodic quality that somehow made the contempt worse. "I have faced hatchlings with more threat potential." The crowd laughed, a cacophony of alien sounds that hammered at Dallas's resolve. He gripped his staff tighter, centering himself. "I didn't come to impress you," he replied, surprised at the steadiness in his voice. "Just to survive you." Neil's eyes narrowed, the amber irises contracting to slits. "You won't!" She activated her blades then, the energy fields expanding with a sharp crackle that raised the hair on Dallas's arms. "Your species has sent 43 champions to the Galactic Championships. None have advanced beyond preliminary rounds." Dallas didn't respond. What could he say? She was right. Humanity had only gained provisional access to interstellar travel 50 years ago. They were newcomers in a galaxy of ancient species, and the Galactic Council, with its rigid hierarchies and Byzantine qualification procedures, had made it clear that humans needed to prove themselves. Their technology was derivative, their philosophy unoriginal. Physical prowess was their last avenue. The announcer's voice boomed again. "Champion Nil, Challenger Dallas. Combat commences on the tonal sequence. Survival or submission constitutes victory. Death." A dramatic pause. "Is always a possibility." A series of tones echoed through the arena, ascending notes that built tension with each passing second. Dallas widened his stance, activated the kinetic amplifiers in his staff with a subtle twist. Nil began moving laterally, her blades tracing hypnotic patterns in the air. The final tone sounded, a resonant bell that seemed to vibrate through Dallas's bones. Nil attacked. She crossed the 30 feet between them in a blur of motion that seemed to defy physics. Her first blade swept toward his neck in a killing stroke, while the second angled for his midsection, a combination designed to force an impossible defense. But Dallas had been watching her approach, reading the subtle shifts in her weight distribution, the tilt of her shoulders. He didn't try to block. Instead, he dropped and rolled as the blades scythed through the space where he'd stood. The crowd gasped, then groaned in disappointment as he scrambled behind a waist-high barrier. "Running already," Nil's voice carried over the barrier. "At least give them a show before you die. Earthling." Dallas didn't waste breath responding. He was busy processing what he'd just witnessed. Her speed was extraordinary, but not supernatural. Her attacks followed conventional physics, conservation of momentum, predictable follow-through. If he could anticipate her movements, he might survive long enough to find an advantage. The barrier suddenly retracted into the ground, the arena's first reconfiguration. Dallas darted toward a cluster of pillars, as Nil leapt the space between them, her blades carving glowing arcs through the air. He felt the heat of one pass, centimeters from his back as he dove into cover. For the next several minutes, this pattern repeated, Nil attacking with blinding combinations, Dallas retreating, analyzing, occasionally deflecting with his staff when evasion was impossible. Each contact between her energy blades and his staff sent painful vibrations up his arms. the kinetic amplifiers barely sufficient to prevent the weapons from slicing through the metal. The crowd grew restless. They had expected a quick, bloody spectacle, not this game of cat and mouse. Boos and jeers began to ripple through the stands. "Stop! Running!" Finanil snarled, after a particularly narrow escape, left Dallas pressed against an energy barrier. Its field, making his skin tingle with proximity. "Fight me!" "I am fighting," Dallas replied, genuine confusion in his voice. "Just not how you expected." Something flickered in her amber eyes, a grudging reassessment. She altered her stance, blades lowering slightly. "You study me." "Wouldn't you?" A shadow of a smile touched her lips. "I've never needed to." The arena shifted again, more dramatically this time. The pillars Dallas had been using for cover sank into the ground while new barriers rose, creating a complex maze. The change separated them momentarily. Dallas used the reprieve to catch his breath and reassess. Direct confrontation was suicide. Her speed, reach, and weapons gave her every advantage. But he'd begun to note patterns in her attacks, preferences in her footwork. She favored her right side slightly, turned her left shoulder a fraction before committing to an aggressive combination. More importantly, he'd observed the arena's reconfiguration sequences. They weren't truly random. They followed patterns, likely designed to drive competitors toward confrontation while maintaining visual lines for the audience. If he could predict the next change, Finanil's voice carried over the barriers. "Did your species send you to die, Earthling? Or did they simply not care enough to send someone worthy?" Dallas heard the calculated insult for what it was, an attempt to flush him out, to make him angry and careless. He smiled grimly. She wouldn't be trying to manipulate his emotions if she wasn't growing frustrated. The arena shifted again. Dallas had anticipated correctly. A central clearing formed as barriers slid away. He didn't retreat this time. Instead, he stepped into the open space. Staff held in a defensive position. Finanil emerged from the maze, her expression showing the first hints of genuine interest. "Finally found your courage?" "Just changing strategies." Dallas adjusted his grip on the staff. "All that chasing must be tiring." Her eyes narrowed. "I don't tire." "Everyone tires," Dallas replied, "even champions." She attacked with renewed fury, blades weaving a deadly pattern. But this time, instead of simply evading, Dallas engaged. He used the staff's length to keep her at maximum distance, deflecting rather than blocking, redirecting her momentum rather than opposing it directly. For the first time, the crowd's attention sharpened. What had seemed like cowardice now revealed itself as strategy. The human was fighting intelligently, economically, using the champion's aggression against her. Finanil adapted quickly. She shortened her combinations, varied her timing, tried to disrupt Dallas's defensive rhythm, but he continued to anticipate her, moving just enough to avoid lethal contact, occasionally landing light, probing strikes with the staff's ends. None of his hits caused significant damage. The kinetic amplifiers weren't powerful enough to penetrate her natural resilience. But each successful connection clearly surprised her. No opponent had touched her in 17 matches. "You're better than the others," she acknowledged during a momentary separation. "But this ends the same way." Dallas didn't respond verbally. Instead, he shifted his stance subtly, inviting an attack on his apparently vulnerable left side. Finanil took the bait, lunging with perfect form, her right blade angling for his exposed ribs. It was exactly what Dallas had anticipated. He pivoted at the last possible moment, letting her momentum carry her past him. As she moved to recover her balance, he executed a precisely timed counter, not with the staff, but with his elbow, driving it into the unarmored section beneath her raised arm. The impact wasn't devastating, but it connected solidly, and more importantly, it broke skin. A small trickle of iridescent blue-purple liquid, Veltar blood, ran down Finanil's side. The crowd went completely silent for 3 heartbeats, then erupted in shock and excitement. The holoscreen zoomed in on the wound, magnifying the impossible. The undefeated champion was bleeding. Finanel froze, her expression cycling through disbelief, outrage, and something more complex, a grudging fascination. She touched the wound with her fingertips, examining the blood with something approaching wonder. 43 matches, she said quietly, though her voice still carried in the sudden hush. No one has drawn blood. Dallas maintained his defensive stance, wary of retaliation. First time for everything. Something changed in Finanil's eyes. A cold certainty cracked, replaced by a fierce, focused interest. When she resumed her attack, it was with a different quality, less dismissive, more respectful, but no less lethal. They exchanged a series of strikes and counters, moving across the arena in a deadly dance. Dallas couldn't match her speed or power, but he continued to read her patterns, to anticipate and adapt. He landed 2 more minor hits, receiving a shallow cut across his shoulder in return that stained his armor with crimson. The crowd was fully engaged now, voices raised in appreciation of the unexpected contest. The holoscreens displayed the fighter's vitals, Finanil's barely elevated heart rate, Dallas's hammering pulse, and rising body temperature. He was reaching his physical limits while she remained fresh. Time was against him. He needed to change the parameters. During a momentary separation, Dallas glanced at a nearby power conduit, one of dozens that supplied energy to the arena's shifting barriers and environmental systems. His engineer's eye noted the access panel, the routing indicators, the subtle vulnerabilities in its design. A desperate plan formed. When Finanil closed again, Dallas deliberately overextended on a defensive move. Her counterstrike sliced a burning line across his thigh, drawing a gasp of pain that wasn't entirely feigned. He stumbled, using the movement to position himself near the power conduit. "It begins," Finanil said, satisfaction in her voice. "Your endurance fades. Human." "Maybe," Dallas agreed, shifting to keep the conduit just behind him. "But I'm still standing." Not for long. She launched another attack, driving him back precisely where he wanted to go. As her blades came in, Dallas spun his staff in a defensive pattern that he knew would fail, but would occupy her attention for the crucial seconds he needed. While her focus was on breaking through his guard, his left hand dropped to the conduit's access panel, fingers finding the emergency release. The panel slid open. Dallas jammed the end of his staff into the exposed circuitry and activated the kinetic amplifier to maximum. The result was immediate and catastrophic. Energy surged through systems never designed to handle such disruption. Throughout the arena, barriers flickered, environmental controls sputtered, and the artificial lighting dimmed momentarily. Finanil leapt back, sensing danger but not understanding its source. "What have you—" She never finished the question. Above them, with a groaning of metal and hydraulics, a massive blast door, part of the arena's emergency containment system, broke free from its suddenly malfunctioning locks and plummeted toward them. Dallas had anticipated this. It was part of his desperate gamble. Finanil, still focused on combat, had not. In the second before the 3-ton door would have crushed her, Dallas launched himself forward, tackling her out of the kill zone. They rolled across the sand, Dallas's momentum carrying them barely clear as the blast door crashed down with a thunderous impact that shook the entire arena. Debris peppered them, a jagged shard opening a cut above Dallas's eye that immediately blinded him with blood. Through the ringing in his ears, Dallas heard alarms blaring and the confused shouts of the crowd. Emergency systems were activating throughout the Coliseum, readings showing multiple critical failures. Finanil shoved him away and rose to a crouch, her blade still active but no longer pointed at him. She stared at Dallas with an expression he couldn't read. "You knew," she said after a moment. You caused the failure, but you knew exactly which system would collapse. Dallas wiped blood from his eye. Engineer, he explained simply. I understand systems. Before she could respond, arena security drones descended from above, their metallic voices announcing the match's suspension. Medical units followed, humming discs that surrounded both combatants in scanning fields. Competitors will report to medical for assessment, the drones announced. Arena systems require emergency maintenance. Dallas found himself being guided toward one exit, while Finn and Il was directed to another. Just before they were separated, their eyes met across the disrupted arena floor. She gave him the slightest nod, acknowledgement, or respect. He couldn't tell which. Either way, he had survived his first match in the Chthon Coliseum, and somehow, he'd made the undefeatable champion bleed. The medical bay hummed with quiet efficiency, a sterile white environment staffed by beings of various species. Dallas sat on an examination platform, while an insectoid medic, standing upright on 4 of its 6 limbs, while the upper pair manipulated instruments, treated the cut above his eye. Remarkable tissue regeneration capacity, the insectoid commented, compound eyes gleaming with professional interest. Your species heals quickly for soft bodies. Thanks, I think. Dallas winced as the medic applied a sealing compound to the wound. I am Dr. Zeith. The insectoid introduced itself with a slight clicking of mandibles. Chief Medical Officer for the Chthon Championships. Dallas, but you probably knew that. Indeed. The human who made Finn and Il bleed. Dr. Zeith's voice carried a note of something Dallas couldn't quite identify. Caution? Concern? Most unexpected outcome. Not to sound ungrateful for the medical attention, Dr. Zeith, but what happens now? The match was interrupted. The insectoid's antennae twitched. Arena officials will determine whether to resume, reschedule, or call the match as inconclusive. Standard procedure for technical failures. Dallas frowned. Technical failures seem convenient when an undefeated champion is at risk of losing. Dr. Zeith's movements stilled momentarily. A dangerous observation, human. After a pause, the insectoid leaned closer, voice lowered, though not without precedent. What do you mean? Dr. Zeith glanced toward the door, then back to Dallas. System failures during competitive events have increased 73% since the Council opened championship qualification to frontier species. Dallas's mind raced. You're saying these aren't accidents? I am saying nothing. Dr. Zeith straightened, professional demeanor returning. Merely providing statistical context. Your injuries are minor. You are cleared to return to competitor quarters. As the insectoid turned to go, Dallas asked, Dr. Zeith, where is Finn and Il being treated? The compound eyes studied him. Bay 3, but unauthorized visitation between competitors is prohibited. Of course, just curious. Dr. Zeith made a sound that might have been the insectoid equivalent of a skeptical snort, then departed, leaving Dallas alone with his thoughts. He waited until the bay was clear, then slipped from the examination platform. The corridor outside was minimally staffed. Most personnel were likely dealing with the arena malfunctions. Following directional indicators, Dallas made his way toward Bay 3. He found Finn and Il sitting upright on an examination platform, similar to his own. The shallow wound at her side had been sealed with some kind of crystalline compound that glinted in the bright medical lighting. She looked up as he entered, surprise flickering across her features before settling into wary assessment. You should not be here, human, she said, but made no move to call security. Probably not, Dallas agreed, keeping his distance. But I had questions that seemed worth the risk. Questions? She tilted her head slightly. About what? About how convenient that system failure was. About why Dr. Zeith mentioned similar failures happening specifically during matches with frontier species. Dallas met her amber gaze steadily. About why the undefeated champion of the Chthon Coliseum Might not want to continue a match where she's actually bleeding for once. Finanil's expression hardened. In a fluid motion that reminded Dallas of her lethal speed, she slid from the platform and closed the distance between them. She loomed over him, using her height advantage to intimidating effect. "You think I engineered a failure to avoid defeat?" Her voice was dangerously soft. Dallas held his ground. "I think someone might have, and I think you're too good a warrior not to have noticed these accidents happening before." For a long moment, Finanil simply stared at him, her amber eyes unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed, a melodic sound with genuine amusement. "You are either very brave or very foolish. Dallas of Earth." She stepped back, giving him space. "But your accusation is misdirected. I fight my own battles, win or lose."
Then who?
Politics. She practically spat the word. "The championships are meant to determine council representation. New species disrupt established power structures. Some find this inconvenient." Dallas processed this. "You're saying matches are being rigged against newcomers." "I am saying nothing so direct." Finanil's expression turned calculating. "But if one were investigating such a possibility, one might examine the maintenance tunnels beneath Section 47. She glanced at a chronometer on the wall. "Security rotation occurs in 20 minutes. A window of approximately 4 minutes exists before new patrols begin." Dallas blinked in surprise. "Why tell me this?" Finanil touched the crystalline seal on her side. "Because you made me bleed fairly. And because," she paused, considering her words carefully, "because 43 victories mean nothing if the field is tilted." Her eyes met his again, fierce and determined. "I am a warrior, not a puppet." Understanding dawned. "You want to know if your victories were earned." "I know they were earned," she corrected sharply. "I want to know if others' defeats were assisted." Dallas nodded slowly. "Section 47, 4-minute window." I said nothing. Finanil turned away, returning to the examination platform. "Now, leave before security arrives. Human." Dallas moved to the door, then paused. "My name is Dallas." A faint smile touched her lips. "I know your name, Dallas." 23 minutes later, Dallas slipped through an access hatch into the maintenance tunnels beneath the Chthon Coliseum. The space was cramped, clearly designed for utility drones rather than humanoid maintenance workers, and dimly lit by strips of bioluminescent fungus that cast everything in a sickly green glow. He navigated by counting junction markers, following the numerical sequence toward Section 47. The tunnels were surprisingly complex, a labyrinth of conduits, pipes, and power cables that served the massive arena above. His engineer's eye appreciated the intricate systems, even as he remained alert for security drones. At Junction 46C, he heard movement ahead, the subtle sound of someone attempting to move quietly. Dallas pressed himself against the wall, wishing he'd been allowed to keep his staff. A shadow detached from the darkness, tall, graceful, unmistakable. "Finanil," he whispered. "You actually came." She sounded almost impressed. "Perhaps humans possess some courage after all." "Or some stupidity," Dallas countered. "Why are you here? I thought you were just giving me information." She moved closer, and he saw she'd changed from her arena attire into a close-fitting black bodysuit that made her blue skin seem almost luminous in the dim lighting. Her white hair was now tightly braided, practical rather than ceremonial. "Trust is earned, not given," she replied. "I needed to see if you would act, and how. Now I know. And we continue together." She gestured down the tunnel. Section 47 houses the weapons calibration systems and environmental controls. If matches are being manipulated, evidence will be there. They proceeded in silence. Finanil moving with natural stealth, while Dallas concentrated on keeping his footfalls quiet. At the entrance to Section 47, they encountered a security barrier, a glowing field of energy that hummed with menace. "Restricted access," Dallas muttered. "How do we get past?" Fina removed something from a pouch at her waist, a small crystalline rod that pulsed with inner light. "Champions are given certain privileges." She pressed the rod against a reader beside the barrier. The field flickered, then dissolved. "Convenient," Dallas commented. "Until now. I've had no reason to question such conveniences." Her voice carried an edge of bitterness. Beyond the barrier lay a large chamber, filled with equipment. Racks of weapons, similar to those Dallas had seen in the preparation area. Diagnostic stations, and banks of controls that presumably connected to arena systems. They split up, examining different sections of the room. Dallas focused on a series of weapon mounts, where energy blades similar to Finanil's were stored. His fingers traced power couplings, balance mechanisms, field emitters. "Finanil," he called softly. "Look at this." She joined him, crouching to examine what he'd found. The power cells in several weapons had been subtly modified, limiters adjusted, output calibrated to unstable levels. "These would overload during sustained use," Dallas explained. "Catastrophically, most likely." Finanil's expression darkened. "Show me more." They moved methodically through the chamber, finding more evidence with each passing minute. Balance weights shifted in projectile weapons to ensure dangerous inaccuracy. Toxin dispensers in blade handles, calibrated to release during specific temperature ranges. Remote override capabilities installed in armor systems. "This is extensive," Dallas said, disgust evident in his voice. "Systematic sabotage. And targeted." Finanil indicated markings on the modified equipment, designations for specific arena sections, competitor categories, frontier species assignment sectors, qualification match equipment. Dallas's stomach twisted with anger. "The championships are supposed to be fair combat. This is murder disguised as sport." "Worse," Finanil said quietly. "It's politics disguised as honor." She straightened, decision evident in her posture. "We need to document this. Transmit the evidence to the Galactic Council directly." "How? I doubt the arena communication systems will cooperate." Her amber eyes gleamed. "The Council maintains a direct relay in the administrative section, for emergencies and official communications." She hesitated, then added, "Accessing it without authorization is punishable by execution under galactic law." Dallas let out a humorless laugh. "Compared to what? Dying in rigged combat for someone else's political agenda?" "You understand the choice clearly." Finanil nodded approval. "The relay is in central administration, 3 levels up. Getting there won't be easy," Dallas warned. "Security will be heaviest around administrative areas." "Then we should—" Finanil stopped abruptly, head tilting in a listening posture. "Security drone, coming this way." They had barely enough time to duck behind the equipment rack before a hovering security unit glided into the chamber. The drone, a spherical device bristling with sensors, and what Dallas recognized as non-lethal suppression weapons, conducted a methodical sweep of the area. Dallas held his breath as the drone approached their hiding spot. Beside him, Finanil tensed, ready to strike if discovered. The drone paused, sensors whirring as it processed readings. Then, unexpectedly, alarms blared throughout the facility. The drone immediately abandoned its sweep, accelerating toward the exit in response to the higher priority alert. "What happened?" Dallas whispered once the drone was gone. "Unknown, but advantageous." Finanil was already moving. "The alert will draw security to whatever triggered it. We use the distraction to reach central administration." They slipped from the chamber, moving quickly through tunnels now bathed in pulsing red emergency lighting. The alarms continued, accompanied by automated announcements in multiple languages, directing all personnel to security stations. "They've discovered the security barrier was breached," Finanil explained as they ran. "Standard protocol is to secure all sensitive areas and conduct personnel accounting." Which means they'll know we're missing, Dallas concluded. Precisely. Our window is closing. They reached an access ladder that led upward. Finanil went first, climbing with effortless grace while Dallas followed, his wounded thigh protesting the exertion. 3 levels up, they emerged into a service corridor adjacent to the administrative section. Here, the architecture changed dramatically. No longer utilitarian tunnels, but polished corridors with actual aesthetic considerations. The walls gleamed with an opalescent finish, lighting recessed into decorative fixtures, air noticeably fresher. Central administration is through the main atrium, Finanil whispered. The relay station connects directly to council headquarters on Arthurus Prime. Guards? Inevitably, but we have surprise and purpose. They have routine and complacency. Dallas nodded. Lead on. They moved down the corridor, approaching a junction that opened into a larger space, presumably the atrium Finanil had mentioned. Voices became audible, security personnel coordinating response to the alarm. Finanil held up a hand, signaling Dallas to wait. She peered carefully around the corner, then withdrew. 4 guards, standard equipment, positioned at cardinal points, she reported. The relay station is on the far side, marked with council insignia. Direct approach? No viable alternative given time constraints. She gave him an evaluating look. Can you handle yourself in close combat? Dallas thought of his limited training, his engineer's background. Not like you can, but I'm adaptable. Adaptability has merit. Finanil reached into another pouch at her waist and withdrew a small device, pressing it into Dallas's palm. Sonic disruptor, single use, short range. It will disorient for approximately 3 seconds. Make them count. Dallas examined the device, a simple pressure trigger on a disc no larger than a coin. What's your approach? Direct. A fierce smile spread across her face, revealing teeth that seemed just slightly too sharp. I am still a champion of the Veltar Dominion. Without further discussion, she stepped into the atrium. Dallas followed close behind, the sonic disruptor ready. The guards reacted instantly, weapons rising. Finanil didn't hesitate. She launched herself at the nearest 2, moving with the same blinding speed she'd displayed in the arena. Without her energy blades, she relied on devastating strikes to vulnerable points. A knee shattered with a precisely angled kick, a throat crushed by an elbow strike. Dallas targeted the guard farthest from Finanil, activating the sonic disruptor as he closed the distance. The device emitted a pulse that was felt rather than heard, a pressure wave that disrupted inner ear function. The guard staggered, disoriented, as Dallas delivered a solid strike to the base of the skull with the edge of his hand. The guard collapsed. The 4th guard managed to activate an alarm panel before Finanil reached him. New sirens joined the existing cacophony, these more urgent, more strident. Facility lockdown initiated, announced an automated voice. All sections sealing in 30 seconds. Hurry! Finanil shouted, already sprinting toward the relay station, a small room separated from the atrium by a transparent partition. Dallas ran after her, his engineer's mind racing ahead to the inevitable complications. Lockdown would mean physical barriers, possibly energy fields, and certainly increased security response. They had moments, not minutes. Finanil reached the relay station first, pressing her champion's access crystal against the reader. The door slid open, and they tumbled inside as heavy metal shutters began descending throughout the atrium. 20 seconds to complete lockdown, the automated voice continued. The relay station was compact but sophisticated, a single console bristling with holographic interfaces, quantum entanglement modules, and direct council authentication systems. Dallas immediately began examining the transmission protocols, while Finanil stood guard at the door. How quickly can you prepare the evidence? She asked, tension evident in her voice. Working on it, Dallas muttered, fingers flying across interface panels. His engineering background proved valuable. The system architecture was complex but followed logical patterns. I need to bypass authentication. Establish a direct channel to the Council Judiciary Committee. Security forces approaching, Finanil warned. Multiple signatures. Dallas didn't look up. Almost there. Just need to... He activated a series of commands, watching as authentication warnings flashed and were circumvented by his improvisations. Got it. Channel open. 10 seconds to complete lockdown. Transmit everything, Finanil urged, moving to the console. Together, they rapidly compiled the evidence, images of the sabotaged equipment, system logs showing pattern recognition targeting frontier species, maintenance records revealing the timing of accidents. Transmission initiated, Dallas confirmed. 97% probability of reception. 5 seconds to complete lockdown. Finanil's eyes met his. We won't make it out before the shutter's complete. I know. Dallas activated a final command sequence. But there's always another way. The console emitted a confirmation tone as the transmission completed. Simultaneously, Dallas triggered an emergency override he'd discovered in the system architecture, a maintenance protocol designed to ensure service access during lockdowns. 3 seconds. Where? Finanil demanded, understanding immediately. Dallas pointed to a maintenance shaft hidden behind a panel beside the console. Service tunnels connect to docking bays. It's how technicians reach ships during emergencies. 1 second. They wrenched the panel open and squeezed into the shaft as the lockdown completed, with a resonant thud of metal barriers engaging throughout the facility. Emergency lighting activated in the shaft. Dim red illumination that cast eerie shadows. Impressive improvisation, Finanil acknowledged as they crawled through the cramped space. Just following the systems, Dallas replied. Everything connects if you know where to look. They navigated a complex network of maintenance shafts, guided by Dallas's understanding of facility design principles and Finanil's innate sense of direction. Twice they froze as security drones passed nearby, sensors sweeping methodically through adjacent tunnels. After what felt like hours but was likely less than 20 minutes, they reached a junction that opened into a larger space. A small display panel indicated their location. Auxiliary Docking Bay C7. We've reached the periphery, Finanil whispered. Security will be concentrated here. Options? She considered. We need a vessel. Something small, maneuverable. Courier shuttles dock in this section. And after that, where do we go? Finanil's expression turned grim. Away. The transmission will reach the Council. But until they act, we are fugitives who attacked security personnel and accessed restricted systems. Neither of our species has sufficient standing to protect us. Dallas absorbed this. In helping expose the corruption, he'd become an outlaw, unable to return to Earth or fulfill his original mission. The irony wasn't lost on him. Then we go together, he said simply. Find a neutral location until the Council responds. Something flickered in Finanil's amber eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or approval. Together, she agreed. They exited the maintenance shaft cautiously, emerging behind a cluster of supply crates in the docking bay. The space was relatively small, designed for service and courier vessels, rather than passenger ships. 3 shuttles were currently docked, their access ramps extended. Security was indeed heavy. 6 guards patrolled the bay, and automated defense turrets were mounted at strategic points. A control station near the bay doors was staffed by 2 technicians monitoring displays. Central shuttle, Finanil indicated with a slight gesture. Diplomatic courier, fastest of the 3, and equipped with long-range communications. Also the most heavily watched, Dallas observed. Which is why we take the maintenance vessel instead. She pointed to the rightmost shuttle, a utilitarian craft with exposed access panels and service drones moving around its hull. Less scrutiny, more opportunity. They waited, observing patrol patterns. When a momentary gap appeared, they moved quickly between crate clusters, working their way toward the maintenance shuttle. They were halfway there when alarms sounded yet again. But this time, the cause was immediately apparent. The massive bay doors began to cycle open, a new vessel requesting emergency docking privileges. The distraction was perfect. As security personnel and technicians focused on the incoming ship, Dallas and Finanil sprinted the remaining distance to the maintenance shuttle. Its access ramp was down, a service drone halfway up, carrying replacement parts. Finanil dispatched the drone with a precise strike that disabled, rather than destroyed it. They slipped past, entering the shuttle's cramped interior. The cockpit was utilitarian, bare metal surfaces, exposed circuitry, controls designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Dallas took the pilot's position, while Finanil secured the access hatch. "Can you fly this?" she asked, sliding into the co-pilot seat. "Engineering includes flight systems," Dallas replied, already activating the pre-launch sequence. "Basics are universal. Specifics can be improvised." The shuttle systems came online with surprising responsiveness. Dallas noted with approval that maintenance vessels were designed for rapid deployment. Fewer safety interlocks, more direct control interfaces. Outside, the incoming vessel had completed docking. Security personnel were moving toward it, momentarily focused away from the maintenance bay. "Now or never," Dallas muttered, engaging the shuttle's propulsion system. The craft lifted smoothly, repulsors humming as it rose from the docking clamps. The movement immediately triggered proximity alarms throughout the bay. Security personnel spun, weapons rising. "Evasive action recommended," Finanil noted calmly, as the first energy bolts struck the shuttle's hull. Dallas didn't waste breath responding. He pushed the throttle to maximum, angling the shuttle toward the still open bay doors. The craft accelerated sharply, nearly throwing them from their seats. Defense turrets tracked them, firing automated bursts that Dallas evaded with sharp course adjustments. The shuttle shuddered under near misses, damage indicators flashing across control panels. "We're hit," Finanil reported. "Lower stabilizers damaged. Atmosphere retention at 84%. "We'll manage," Dallas gritted out, focused entirely on threading the shuttle through the bay doors before they could close. They cleared the opening with meters to spare, bursting into open space beyond the Kithan Coliseum. The massive structure loomed behind them, a gleaming dome set against the reddish landscape of Veltar 9. Almost immediately, pursuit vessels launched from other bays, sleek security craft, with considerably more firepower than their stolen maintenance shuttle. "3 pursuers, attack pattern," Finanil called, monitoring sensor readings. "Weapons locking." Dallas pushed the shuttle harder, skimming the planet's atmosphere to gain speed before angling toward deeper space. "Any defensive capabilities on this thing?" Finanil examined the control interfaces. "Minimal point defense, designed to clear debris, not engage hostiles." She activated the system anyway, the shuttle's small defensive array humming to life. "They're gaining." Dallas studied the navigational display, noting the positions of orbital structures, planetary defense systems, and, most importantly, nearby jump points. "There." He pointed to a marker indicating a commercial jump point approximately 60 kilometers distant. "We need to reach that before they get within primary weapons range." The shuttle strained as Dallas pushed it beyond design parameters, the frame vibrating ominously as they accelerated. Behind them, the pursuit craft closed the distance with alarming speed. 20 seconds to weapons range," Finanil warned. Dallas's mind raced. Direct evasion was impossible. The security vessels were simply faster. They needed another advantage. "The sensor array," he said suddenly. "This is a maintenance vessel. It must have calibration tools for communication and detection systems." Finanil caught his meaning immediately. Her fingers danced across control panels, accessing maintenance subroutines. "Found it. Full spectrum analyzer and signal generator. Can you configure it to output random frequency patterns across all standard detection bandwidths?" "Creating sensor chaos," she nodded, rapidly implementing the improvisation? Clever. The shuttle's systems reconfigured, channeling power to the sensor array. Instead of passive detection, it began broadcasting a cacophony of signals, simulating dozens of ghost contacts, scrambling targeting systems, overwhelming standard filters. The effect was immediate. The pursuit vessels faltered, their previously precise formation breaking as sensors struggled to distinguish reality from the phantom signals. "Jump point in 30 seconds, Dallas called, maintaining their heading despite damage warnings flashing with increasing urgency across the control panels. The lead pursuit vessel recovered first, its more sophisticated systems adapting to the interference. Energy weapons fired, a barrage that Dallas mostly evaded with a desperate roll. One blast caught the shuttle's aft section, sending cascading damage alerts through the cockpit. "Propulsion at 60%, Finanil reported calmly. "Jump drive still functional." 15 seconds. Another barrage, another evasive maneuver. The shuttle groaned under the strain, structural integrity warnings joining the chorus of alerts. 5 seconds. The jump point loomed ahead, a shimmering distortion in space where precisely calibrated fields created a momentary wormhole through the fabric of reality. Commercial points were established on stable routes, connecting major systems with minimal navigation risk. "Transmitting jump authorization codes," Finanil announced, broadcasting identification signals that would allow them passage. The codes were likely invalid, or already flagged, but the automated systems would require time to verify and deny, time they could use. 3, 2, 1. The shuttle plunged into the jump point, just as the security vessels fired a final, coordinated barrage. Energy weapons dispersed harmlessly against the collapsing jump field as Dallas and Finanil were catapulted into hyperspace, leaving Veltar 9 and the Chthon Coliseum far behind. 4 months later, on the neutral world of Arthris, Dallas stood at the observation deck of a Council transport vessel. The massive ship hung in synchronous orbit above the planet's gleaming capital city, a sprawling metropolis of crystalline towers and verdant parklands that served as the seat of galactic governance. The view was breathtaking, but Dallas barely noticed it. His attention was fixed on the news hologram floating before him, displaying proceedings from the Council's Grand Chamber. Unanimous decision to implement the Competitive Integrity Act, announced a dignified Arthrian elder, their translucent skin shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that indicated formal declaration. All championship events determining council representation must adhere to new oversight protocols, with independent verification of equipment, venues, and officiating. The camera panned across the chamber, showing representatives from hundreds of species. Among them, Ambassador Chen stood proudly as Earth's provisional representative, their status elevated following the exposure of systematic corruption in the qualification process. The scandal had rocked the galactic political landscape. Dozens of officials had been removed from positions of power, championship results nullified and reconsidered, and most significantly, the rigid qualification requirements for council representation had been reformed to prevent established powers from suppressing emerging species. Dallas smiled faintly. The cost had been high. He couldn't return to Earth without facing charges related to the theft of the maintenance shuttle. And Finanil had been stripped of her champion status for abandoning the Chthon championships. But the results justified their sacrifice. The door to the observation deck slid open. Dallas turned, his smile widening as Finanil entered. She wore a simple tunic rather than battle armor, though the golden tattoos on her blue skin still shimmered with each movement. Her white hair hung loose around her shoulders, no longer bound with the ceremonial rings of championship. "It is done," she said, coming to stand beside him. "The Council has ratified all provisions." "I saw," Dallas nodded toward the hologram. "Your testimony was compelling. Truth requires no embellishment." She glanced at the broadcast, where footage now showed the corrupted arena systems they had exposed. "Though I admit, your technical explanations proved crucial." Few council members understand engineering well enough to recognize deliberate sabotage. Dallas shrugged modestly. We make a good team. Indeed we do. Finanil's amber eyes held his gaze. Over the months of their fugitive existence, hiding on frontier worlds while awaiting the Council's investigation, something profound had developed between them, a connection that transcended their different species, backgrounds, and experiences. The transport leaves for the Arthurian Outworlds tomorrow, Dallas noted. We should be safe there. The amnesty agreement covers all charges related to the investigation. Safety is relative, Finanil observed with a hint of amusement. But acceptable destinations are limited when one is a disgraced champion and the other an engineer turned fugitive. Any regrets? Dallas asked, genuinely curious. She had sacrificed more than he had, centuries of status and honor within the Veltar Dominion. Finanil considered the question seriously, her expression thoughtful. I won 43 matches believing I was the greatest warrior in the championships, she said finally. Then, I drew blood once and discovered I was merely a pawn in someone else's game. She shook her head. No, I regret nothing. Truth has value beyond titles. And us? Dallas asked, more hesitantly. Any regrets there? Her lips curved in a smile. You made me bleed. Dallas of Earth. Then you showed me how to bleed for something that matters. She reached out, taking his hand in hers, her blue fingers intertwining with his brown ones. No regrets, only possibilities. The hologram shifted to a view of stars, the galactic core swirling with brilliant light against the void. The transport hummed around them as it prepared for its journey to the Outworlds, where they would begin the next chapter of their shared story. Finanil gestured toward the vista of stars. You were an engineer before all this. You built things. Bridges, mostly. Dallas nodded. Structures that connect places that were separate before. Show me your bridges, she said softly. Dallas squeezed her hand gently. I want to show you more than that. As the stars began to blur with the transport's acceleration into hyperspace, they stood together. Two beings from worlds light years apart who had found connection in the most unlikely circumstances. Champions, not of the arena, but of something far more valuable: truth, justice, and the belief that different species could stand as equals in a vast and complex galaxy. The transport slipped into hyperspace, carrying them toward an uncertain but shared future, one they would face together.